So with that, it's now time to introduce Renee Bergeron. She is the Vice President responsible for our cloud computing opportunity and offerings at IngramMicro. She's got 25 years of business unit leadership, and she's going to share with us today how her speaking skills have influenced her career and how she prepares for big and complex presentations that she makes to our customers and our internal stakeholders. With that, I'd like to introduce Renee Bergeron.
Thanks, Lori. I don't know if many of you know this about me, but I hate April. I hate April, it's true. I hate April. Not April Allen, who works in Croatia. She's quite cool. I have no problem with her. It's the month of April that I hate. Now, can anybody guess why I hate the month of April? Yes? Cloud Summit. Yes. In fact, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with the Cloud Summit, and that's what I'll share with you today. For those of you who don't know, the Cloud Summit is the annual event for our division, and I do the keynote. I do a lot of presentation throughout the years to vendor and other conferences, but the Cloud Summit is just big because, first of all, there's a lot of people in the room. This year there was 1,000 people in the room. But, you really just look at the first few rows, so that's not the big thing. More importantly, I do the opening keynote. I make all the announcements for our team, and it's generally 80 to 90 minutes keynote, so it's like a marathon. And the thing that is the hardest for me is that it's not just like having to present and doing a good job at it, but I feel I represent the team in that keynote because I'm launching everything for our team. So if I fail, I'm failing on the team, and nobody wants that, right? So I hate the month of April. I have to go through rigorous, preparation and planning, and I sweat it out. And it's a love-hate relationship because once you do it, it's the best feeling ever. I walk off the stage, I'm exhilarating. I'm kind of walking on clouds, basically. Today, that's what I'm going to talk to you about. It's not a typical presentation, right? It's kind of a marathon. But I'm going to talk about my 13 survival rules. And I'm going to start by breaking all the rules. This is font 7. There's actually 13 rules. You're supposed to have just 3, right? Or I think it's even or odd number. And then it's 13, right? Wow. I think I've broken every single rule in that. And I'll come back to it later. But basically, I'm going to focus on 3 teams. So I guess I'm redeeming myself here. And by the way, I have another rule that I've broken. I think I have 28 slides that we're going to cover in 30 minutes. So that's going to be interesting to see if I can do that. But I'm going to talk about grabbing their attention. I'm going to talk about the fact that there's nothing natural about it. And I'm going to talk about the fact that you have to have fun with it. All right? So let's jump right into it. We're going to start with grabbing the attention, right? So you've probably all seen that a million times. You guys know this theory and all. But I want to give you examples of some of the things I do to grab their attention. And I'm going to use this throughout this presentation to show you examples. So when I talk about grabbing their attention, I think it's important to start with a bang, right? And starting with a bang is how you title your presentation, right? Too often we do a title that reflects what the presentation is, right? So we would say something like Cloud Strategy Rollout. It describes what I'm going to present. So I like being whimsical with it. Here are some of the ones I've used in the past 3 years, starting with Cloudy with a Promise of Success. That was 2010, 2011. Has nothing to do with what I'll present. Right? More cloud, less fluff. And the creative team gets all the credit for coming up with some of these. But I'm kind of sending a message right from the start and grabbing the attention. And I'm putting a sense out there that it's going to be something different, right? Whose cloud is it anyway? Building your money cloud. What the hell is a money cloud? I don't know, but it's just about grabbing the attention. Rise Above was the theme this year. So when you think about starting with a bang, it's not just the first words you say. It's even the image you project before you get on the stage with the title of the slides. It's the music as well. I see Eric back there, and I realized at some point Eric was putting some great music as people were walking onto the stage. So I thought, all right, before I even say my first word, I talked to Eric one day and I said, how about playing out Get Off of My Cloud when I walk on the stage? Just to again start with the image. And the first time Eric did that, it was awesome. And I walked up there and it kind of put me in the mood a little bit. And I said, that's right, get off of my cloud. It's IngramMicro's cloud. Get out off of it, right? It just kind of allows you to get going. So I hadn't spoken a word yet, but I was starting to send some messages with the music. Now, the other thing is the first thing you say. And I think that we're trained to start with the purpose of my presentation is X. And I'm going to walk you through the agenda. This is what I'm going to talk about. I encourage everybody to not do that. This is what I started with at the North America Exec Staff meeting in 2013. We were rolling well. Our cloud business was growing, doubling every year. We were getting good recognition on the marketplace. And I walked on main stage and I said, you know, I got to tell you, I don't think this cloud thing's going to work for me. So I didn't start by telling them what I was going to present. I started with, again, grabbing their attention. I try to do that with you today as I started. And I started with, I hate April. It has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about. But it's all about not going through the traditional motions, building a rhythm from the start that's just kind of punchy and grabs the attention and keeps people with you so that you can later give the content you want to give. This is another one I use at the Cloud Summit 2013. We started flashing some headlines. And I walked on and the headlines started flashing. And I said, remember these headlines? So it has nothing to do, again, with the content I was going to present. But it was about just kicking it off and setting a tone for what the presentation was all about. And I had some fun with some of those. One of them was cloud computing is dead, hello space computing. Right? You can have a lot of fun actually with that one. So start with a bang. Silence is your friend. I use silence a lot. So first I try to slow down my speaking because it gives me time to think. It gives me time to get over the nerves. But I also use silence for a couple purposes. Sometimes to gather my thoughts, sometimes to put some emphasis on what I'm trying to say. I used it at the beginning of this presentation. I said, I hate April. You're putting emphasis in what you're doing when you're using silence. And I think individually we kind of have fear that if there's silence, it means we don't know what to say. But it's not. It can be done and used very intentionally to achieve the purpose. This is another way I've used it. This is a sentence I said at the Cloud Summit 2014 in my keynote at least 8 times, potentially 9 or 10. It was a key sentence that had been really well thought out because it told everything about our value proposition when it comes to our portfolio. But it's in the way you say it. So I always say, Ingram Micro will provide you access to a comprehensive portfolio of cloud services from cloud service provider you can trust will deliver to your customer. Right? So I make an intentional pose. And what does that do when I do that? Where does it put the emphasis? It put the emphasis on the word trust. Now, it was very interesting because in the meetings that followed the following 2 days, I met with a lot of resellers, and they said, I like the fact that you guys do the due diligence. I like the fact I can trust your vendor partner. And it resonated, and it's just by using silence that you can create some effect. Another thing I do is I try to build a rhythm. So I don't know if you've heard of the rule of 3, but you want to emphasize some elements, and you can use the rule of 3 to create a rhythm in your presentation. So I'm going to have to close up because my eyes aren't that good. But these are examples that I've used in Cloud Summit. And in fact, when I looked at my notes, and I'll talk about this later, from Cloud Summit 2013, I'd used the rule of 3 in 6 or 7 different places. So just creating a dynamic, it just creates a rhythm, right? So in this case, we had shown a video about a businessman starting a small business on his own, not having an IT guy, and struggling, not knowing what to do. So the message was, how does a businessman know that the service provider can actually deliver on their commitment? How does a businessman know that he has negotiated the best IT deal for their business? And how can a businessman integrate their cloud solution? Right? So it's always, how does a businessman? How does a businessman? How does a businessman? It kind of helps you get into a rhythm about a message you're passing. The second one is, they look at how, so it was about our due diligence and what we do, right? They look at how multi-tenancy has been implemented. They look at whether the solution will scale. And they look at the solution, right? So for some reason, apparently our brain worked better around 3 elements. And if you use a similar way to phrase it, it often gets you in a rhythm about what you're doing, kind of helps you emphasize a point. The other thing, which everybody knows, is repeating the message. I've already found a way to say this message twice in this presentation, so I'm on track here. But as I was saying earlier, in the Cloud Summit presentation, I said this message eight times that I counted when I looked at my notes, and I may have said it more often because I don't always follow the notes. And I think, well, that's kind of weird, right? To actually always repeat the same thing, but you have to, so that people can absorb the message and start seeing it from multiple angles. So this one message, which was a really important element of our value proposition, was placed at different points in the presentation, not on slides, but in my presentation, to make sure the message was coming across. So the other thing you have to do to grab attention is move, right? Leverage the stage. And I know people that are pacers, and I know people that are standard. So you can stand there and present like this, or other people, they just pace. And they go 6 step left, and they go 6 step right. And they're quite good, and they're looking at the audience, and they're very engaging, but it's very predictable what they're going to do. And it's like a metronome. Thank you. It just goes left and right, and you almost get into a dull swing, right? So what I try to do is I try to leverage the stage, and I'll just be talking, and I'll get to this level, and I'll talk to the audience that is out here. And so I say I'm a pacing standard because I do a little bit of both. But you have to really use the space. And there was this about 10 years ago, I remember seeing this executive that was outstanding. And he would actually get off of the stage and get into the room, in the aisle. And it was a bit intimidating because sometimes he was talking a bit like this, and you feel like, okay, I got it. But I think if you use the space, first, you feel you've got some freedom, and it kind of loosens you up a little bit. But also, it gives you different perspective on things. It allows you to look at people differently. And I think from an audience standpoint, you're grabbing more of their attention. And you can use it to put a message, right? So I could be talking about the value proposition for cloud, and it's all about the trust that we put into building our portfolio. You can actually use it for emphasizing as well, when you pause and you turn around. So moving is really key. And I'll touch on that a little bit more. I'll give you some examples of some of the things I did. The next thing I want to talk about is spontaneity. I think it's important to plan spontaneity. And that may sound a little bit weird, but when you're a presenter, you got to control what's going on. But you don't want to appear too stiff either. So, I'll give you 2 examples. In the Cloud Summit, the first year that I was involved in doing it was 2011. We were just launching our platform. We were going to do a live demo. And, the night before, it was still touch and go as to whether it was going to work or not. And at one point, we were setting up a mailbox, and it was going to send an email confirming to the end user that the mailbox has been set up. So we were having problems with that part of the demo, and we had asked a reseller that was very close to us. He was a member of our Service Advisory Council to come on stage and help confirm that the transaction had happened, to give it some credibility. Well, of course, we sent him the email the night before just in case the demo didn't work. And it actually didn't work, the demo, right? But he was quick enough to pick up the older email and read it off. Yeah, my mailbox just been created. Actually, I've been created the night before, right? So it created this spontaneity, right? Having a demo that's live, it's got some hiccups, we fix it and we go, but we have a backup plan so that we're controlling the spontaneity. I used it in the Cloud Summit this year. We used a new tool that's a polling tool. I think Ingram's been using it actually probably for 6 months, right? Or maybe a year? Yeah, a year. So it's a great tool because the audience texts their answer and it shows you the live results of the poll. But the way we were using it is we wanted to convey a message that there were different types of reseller, and some of them weren't very advanced in cloud and some of them were much more advanced in cloud. But we knew resellers kind of all overestimate their own skill set. And so I had talked to members of my team, everyone on the team, we had 65 people ahead of time, and I talked to them and I said, if you're seeing the results polarizing towards B and C, vote for A. Vote for A, we need some A's in there. And sure enough, the results came out great. I still don't know how many voted for A and what was really the resellers' input on it. But you know, so we had planned spontaneity, we got the feedback, but we wanted to control also the message we were saying about it. So you're creating this illusion of spontaneity that has actually got a little bit of planning behind it. Tell a story. I think that's the most important one of all. Johnny helped me put this one together. If you remember, Johnny, we I think it was 2013, the North America Exec Kickoff. They decided to make us do a TED Talk, and I was so annoyed by it. I was so annoyed by it because I said, no, we have to tell our strategy, and it's a lot of work, but we're trying to run the business. I mean, I don't have time to be funny and a TED Talk and this and that. And it was really hard to put together. Normally I can do tons of reuse. I couldn't for this one. So I came up with this, and Johnny actually and I came up with this. And it was really good. This company, Warby Parker, which most of you have heard of by now, was kind of still in the early days. They had reinvented the eyewear business by having an online catalog, no stores, for glasses. And they were really taking the industry by storm. And I used them, never talked to anybody at Warby Parker, by the way, and I don't think you had either. And we just said, well, what if we're Warby Parker and we're starting today, right? What are we going to need from a technology standpoint? And we made it up. And we used the example to show that if you were a small business starting today, you probably would put everything in the cloud. You probably wouldn't buy servers. You probably wouldn't buy any storage. You might buy some network because you need to communicate, but you'd put everything in the cloud. And so by picking a company that was kind of interesting, that we made up the whole story behind it, right? We basically told the Warby Parker story the way we wanted to make the points we wanted. And it was extremely successful in getting the points across. Because it forced everybody to think, if I was an entrepreneur and I was starting out today, what would I need? So that's I think, something that we have to look for in everything we do. And telling a story also involves making it personal. So in this case, my whole presentation was the story. But sometimes the story is just one part of the presentation or one part of the message. In Cloud Summit 2013, a year ago, I wanted to talk about the fact that years ago we just couldn't do things quickly. We couldn't implement, a business leader had a great idea, but it took us, because of mainframe, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months to build the technology behind it. But now we can do it quickly in cloud computing because there's a base infrastructure that's in place that we're leveraging. And I basically talked about when I was a programmer and how we had to develop systems and test them and so on. I made it personal. I told a story that I had gone through when I was supporting a system. And so by telling a story, it became real for the audience. Some may have been through the same motions, the same experience, but others who may not have could still relate to it because I told it as a story. So another good way to grab attention. So I want to talk about the fact that there's nothing natural about it. I hear very often the comment, wow, you're such a natural. You know, you're such a natural at presentation. And I think I do a good job at presentation. You'll rate me later, you can tell me. But I think I do a good job at presentation, but I got to tell you, there's nothing natural about it. My palms sweat, my heartbeat accelerates, my mouth becomes dry for the few minutes that I'm about to walk in. And even here today, because I actually think it's harder presenting to colleagues than it is presenting to an audience of customer, which you don't necessarily know. So I felt it today, in the 15 minutes before the Cloud Summit is just, I'm a mess. The Cloud Summit, I actually don't sleep the night before, not intentionally. So, you know, what do we do? You know, you may think that you're just not good at presentation, but I think that we all feel that way. I feel that way even though I do presentation just about every week now. And I've done some in front of large audience. It just doesn't go away. And it's about how you prep and know that you're ready. And even though your heartbeat is racing, you're still going to do a good job. So I want to talk about some of the tricks I've adopted to look natural when it's not natural at all. So the first thing I do is plan my presentation. That sounds pretty obvious, but I actually put together, and this is a true document for Cloud Summit 2014. It's a 2-page document that has all my messages. This is what I want to do in my presentation, right? There's actually going to be 4 sections, one on products, one on platform, one on service, one on programs. Then I'm going to sum it up. These are the key points I want to make. And this is my tagline, Ingram Micro, simplifying your success in the cloud. That's it. That's an 85-minute presentation right there. That's how I started. I don't start it with slides. I started with a messaging document. What are my key message and how am I organizing it, right? So plan your presentation. Then simplify the message. I present on the topic of cloud, and I remember 3.5 years ago when I joined Ingram, I was attending different presentations. And I've got a technology background, so I can get it. And there were these people up there presenting, not necessarily at Ingram, everywhere. I don't think they understand what they're saying. They were making it complex, and I think that sometimes by making it complex, we think, oh, at least there won't be any question. Or you got to get your material, and then you've got to simplify the message. And I'll give you an example of this, because when you simplify the message, people follow you. And if they follow you, they're getting your points, and you've got a really good chance that they're going to grasp what you're saying. They're going to do something about it. So always think about simplifying the message. It actually, if people are trying to make it look complex, to look more intelligent, I think it works the other way, personally. I want to give you an example with this slide. So I don't know, has anybody ever seen my slide about cloud computing? It's like you own a house, or you own a condo, or you own a hotel. Anybody's ever seen that? Okay. So this is pretty interesting because there's some people from my team, but a lot of hands raised that aren't people from my team, and they know the slide. I haven't even put it up, but this is the slide that I've had the most feedback since I joined Ingram. Everybody will tell me, oh, I remember when you presented that, it's so clear. It's a really simple analogy. So I was trying to illustrate the difference between an on-premise solution, a managed service solution, and a cloud service solution. And this is all factual. It's all really good data. So I start by presenting it, and I go through it, and I explain it. And then I say, you know, let me give you an analogy. It's like a house. You own the house if it's on-premise. Here are the downside of this, etc. And then, you know, if you're in a condo, you're starting to share some service and cost and less risk, etc. And then when you move to the hotel, then, you know, it's what you use that you pay for. And I have different people that have, you know, even in the last month or two told me, oh, I remember when you did this slide, it was great. But what the message was of this slide is simplifying it, right? Relating it to something they could understand. And it was pretty interesting because the first time I did this slide was at NASM, the National Sales Meeting in 2011. And, you know, salespeople. Is anybody in sales? All right, sorry. Salespeople, especially sales guys late at the bar at night, right? They get pretty creative. So that night, they said, "Oh, your analogy, it's okay, but there's a much better one, right? It's the wife, the girlfriend, and the mistress." I'm never going to be able to use that one, but you know what? They had gotten the concept, right? Their analogy was perfect. So you really want to simplify the message so they could get it, and I bet actually they could explain it to their customer, hopefully not in those words. So, simplifying the message for me also means building a framework. I like having a framework in my slides that I build as I go, and that provides a reference picture of what I'm doing. This is from Cloud Summit 2013. The end picture is this one, and I ended up anchoring all of my presentation around these 4 elements. I started here, then I went there, then there. And I kind of built that picture progressively. Initially it looked like this. It had only the right business model. Eventually we added this. Then I talked about the tools, and then the full picture was the extension of the skill set. So for me, that was a way to first convey a simple message, all anchored around these 4 elements. But second, it was good for me as well, because it anchored me as I went along. I kind of, was in section 2, and without having to say, okay, section 2, back to the agenda. So I like using a framework, a picture that I can use to anchor and specify and simplify my message as I go along. Then, prepare and practice. So you've heard this a million times. I want to share with you how I do it. I actually write out what I'm going to say. For Cloud Summit this year, it was an 85-minute keynote. I have a 17-page document, a Word document. And I write down what I'm going to say. I do. If you can see some of this is, click to slide 4. You need to have access to cloud services that address the entire solution stack. Now, I probably don't end up saying it exactly like that, but I bet I say it 70% like my script. The reason why I think it's important to do that is because sometimes, I don't know, maybe that's happened to you as well. You get into a slide and you start it wrong. And now it takes you longer. You have to go around and come back. You're not making your point as clear. And the best way to make your points and make them well is to know how you're going to make them. So I write them out. Most people are visual, so it helps as well if you write it out. But I think of how I'm going to say everything. I think about how I'm going to say everything. For a keynote like this, I really do. And the 17-page document, I generally completed about a week before the Cloud Summit, 5 days before the Cloud Summit. And I have this document printed and with me on all time. And I use it, the best use of it is I use it to scare Jason Bystrack. Because I wave it at him and I say, if I'm sick, you have to do it. But the notes are here, you're good. It's only 17 pages. So that's the most fun I have with it. But the rest of the time I'm carrying it. I could be in line at the grocery and I'm pulling it out. And I'm running the presentation in my head all the time. And I'm not saying it exactly the way the script is, but once in a while I start and I get stuck. The message not coming across well. I go back to the notes and I read it. And I do this for every important and long presentation. I don't do them for every presentation. I didn't write out what I was going to say today. Obviously, I redo often the same slides, so I don't have to spell out. But when I'm starting with new material, I do that. I really plan it out because that's the best way how you're going to deliver the message. The other thing I do is you have to know your timing and your transition. So I actually put a document together that has each of my slides, the time I think I'm going to spend on the slide. I can actually do it because I know what I'm going to say and where I should be based on time. When you have an 85 or 90 minutes keynote, or even a 25 minutes keynote, you should finish within a minute or so of your time. And otherwise you're in trouble with staff. But I got to tell you, I do these 85 or 90 minutes keynote, and I pretty much finish within 2 minutes, more or less, of the time. Right? He agrees. And it's not by luck. So I print it out, and I have this column is cumulative. And often in a long keynote you have some breaks, either you're showing a video or something. So I have this printed, and I have it on the podium, on the stage. So I go to the podium, I grab my bottle, I look at the water, I'm looking down, I know we're at this section, I should be at 43 minutes and a half. I look, I'm at 43. Good, I'm on track. Or I'm at 52. Okay, I'm in trouble, I better hustle, right? So I plan the timing of it. I personally think it's disrespectful as a presenter to go way over time. We had that recently at one event. And on top of it, it was like over lunch. So I'm starving, right? I'm in the audience. I'm starving. This guy is like pushing out lunch. I'm not happy. I'm not listening to his message. It's respectful to actually adhere to the timeline. And you can't do that by luck. You got to plan it. You got to know what you're going to say and plan your timing. By the way, for this keynote at Cloud Summit, when I first added it up to 95 minutes. So I had to figure out where I had to cut to fit in the 85 minutes because we had content that after me that needed to fit in as well. So know your timing and plan your transition. So the last of it is have fun with it. To me, this is how you go from a good presenter to a great presenter. I know this presenter who is a really good presenter. He presents the facts well, his slides are well built, he's clear, he simplifies the message, he gets it across. He's a really good presenter. But he's factual. He's not whimsical about it. He's not throwing humor in there. He doesn't look like he's having fun out there. And he's passing the message, but I don't know that he's reaching he's reaching the brain, is he reaching the mind, and is he getting insights across? So you have to have fun with it. And, I think you've got to be whimsical, and you've got to smile as you're doing presentation. Even when you're talking about technology, you can find a way to smile through it. So I want to give you an example. I'm going to play a video. I almost couldn't find the video, but found it. And this is from Cloud Summit 2012. And what you're going to see is you're going to see me make a mistake. I'm going to look for word, and you're going to see how I handle it. And then you'll see how I handle a situation in a right start.
Yesterday, we held a charity golf tournament for the benefit of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale. And we actually had 74 golfers that played here at the beautiful Weston Kierland Resort, the golf course that you see just in the back of the hotel. And we actually had 74 golfers who braved the elements because it was pretty hot out there. Desert golf is its own type of golf, right? And let me tell you one thing. There wasn't one cloud in the sky, and it was hot. We started, it was about 70, 74. It was pretty comfortable. By the time we ended at 12:30, it was just about rounding at 100 degrees, and it was hot. It's my pleasure this morning to announce the winner of the golf tournament, and it sort of puts me in an awkward position, to be quite honest. Because the winner is the foursome composed of 3 golfers. They played -9, and the winners are Hugh Foley from Knowledge Information Solution. Sorry, Hugh. Sean Staker from Insight, and, well, me from IngramMicro. So I had a feeling some of you would actually think that it was rigged, right? It was organized. And we actually had to pull the rule book last night and see if I'm actually allowed to win at my own event. And the deciding factor was when we pulled the instant replay. And we actually looked at every 18 hole, and our threesome actually got to -9. And we were able to state without a doubt that it contributed in absolutely no way to the score of -9. So we felt it was actually, unfair to take the win away from Hugh and Sean, who played a great round of golf. So Hugh and Sean, congratulations.
So this was, having fun with it, right? It's kind of weird. And we had to go forward with it, but it's an opportunity to have fun with it. And I'm not a funny person. I don't do joke as part of my keynotes. I don't plan humor. But you can use a little situation and kind of turn it on yourself, right? My humor on this one was, I'm a bad golfer. I contributed to nothing, so they deserve to win. But you saw I messed up as well, right? Did anybody pick up? It was pretty obvious. I couldn't remember the name of the guy. I could remember his name. I couldn't remember the name of the company. And, you know, the reality is I couldn't remember it. So I couldn't let them, you can't let these things phase you. You got to go at once like, oh yeah, knowledge professional, sorry, Hugh. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And I use this clip especially because I made the mistake too at the same time. The other thing I use, you know, when I say be whimsical and use the stage is, you guys will probably remember the VTN at one year was in Las Vegas and it had a catwalk. And catwalks are interesting because the stage goes into the audience, so it's a great opportunity to get close with the audience, but then it's kind of weird, you know, how do you do? Do you back up? Turn your back? You got to think through that. But, you know, I decided to have fun with it, so this time we were going to do the 3-minute mailbox. We had taped it. We weren't going to do it live, so we knew it would give the results, and I knew what it was. And so, to be whimsical, I said, you know, I bet you I can do it in 3 minutes. I bet you I can do it this time in 3 minutes. And staff put up a stopwatch, and it started to go, and I started doing it. But as I started doing it, I went off stage. There were steps at the end of the stage. I didn't fall off, but and I went all the way to the back of the stage, and I was telling them what was going on with the demo, and it turned out that it was 3 minutes, 20 seconds or something. But the point was now it was a challenge. How fast can you do a mailbox? And it became funny at the same time. And it just grabbed attention. It was a different way than just doing a demo. So I used the stage in this one. I used technology with a stopwatch, and I created something that was real. So that's another good example. Another one I used was at the North America Exec Staff, the one where I was talking about, I don't think this cloud thing is going to work for me. I started by saying that, and then the slides started going, and I was like, yeah, it's true, we're going really fast, and yeah, it's true, you know, we're winning all the awards, and I just amplified everything we did, and this was going on in the back, so people were, you know, it's kind of a way to laugh at yourself. You can actually use the slide in the background to laugh at you. Because I was saying everything good we were doing, and at the same time I'm like, blah, blah, blah. So just examples of things I've used. The last point I want to make is give yourself a break. We are the worst judge of ourselves. And I'll give you an example. In the Cloud Summit 2013, I had a tough presentation. There were 3 videos, 2 resellers I was interviewing. I was bringing Jason at one point and Paul Hoffman at another point. It was a 90-minute keynote, and it used Prezi. With that is another challenge. But it was just a complex keynote to keep track of all the moving parts. And I think I did a great job. But at the end, you know, I had planned my close, and I wanted to make my points. And you know, the close is important. It's your value proposition. It's the key point you want to leave them with. And I didn't say it the way I had planned it. I just didn't say it the way I planned it perfectly. Didn't do it like I planned it. The keynote was great. I just didn't say it like I planned it. So as I walked off the stage, you know, get into the break, I run into Marie Rourke, who's our press person. Marie had helped me with some of the messaging in that. And she said, oh, great keynote, Renee. And I said, yeah, but I messed up the close. And she looked at me and she said, nobody knows what you were supposed to say. You know? And she's so right. I had messed up because I knew there was a better way to do it. But nobody knew there was a better way to say it. And it wasn't that bad the way I said it. The message still came across. And I think we're our worst critic, and we put the most pressure on ourselves. So we got to accept these mistakes. Like the one about not knowing the reseller's company name, not remembering it. You got to just, you know, oh my God, I'm messing up. Yeah, oh yeah, that's the name. And you move on. Then it's fine. We all mess up. So we've got to be careful of not being our worst judge. And then the last one I want to say is just break the rules intentionally. You know, I started that way. I put a slide up with font 8, with way too many things. I had way too many slides in the deck. But it's okay to break the rules if you're comfortable with it. You know, sometimes and I'm sure you guys know all the things you're supposed to do a good presentation. Lots of image, not too many words, this, that. But you know what? If you want to have fun with it, do it differently. It's okay to break the rules so long as you're feeling comfortable. You're saying your message. You know that message. You're not just saying the words. You know it. It's going to work for you. So don't worry about breaking the rules of Presentation 101, and just have fun with it. That's it.
Thank you, Renee. That was wonderful. We have a little token of appreciation.